All right, so let's dive into this, right? We talked about it. We're gonna lead right into this. We're gonna give everybody a top 10 mock draft. So what does that mean? That means we're just going to draft the first 10 picks of the draft as who they are listed right now. The order listed per Tankathon, how the top 10 goes out. And we're going to, Shane's going to pick the odd number picks. One, 3, 5, 7, and 9. I'll pick 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. And we'll go on. Which means, Shane, you'll get to pick twice for the same team tonight. So that's fun, right? Always good to get that symmetry. So let's get right in there. Number one pick in the draft, currently held by the Chicago Bears by way of the Carolina Panthers. I mean, I have a feeling where you're going here, right?
I don't think there's a question for the Bears here. I think Justin Fields has gotten a pretty raw deal. We both liked him as a prospect. I think he's gotten a pretty raw deal with Chicago. But when undrafted rookie free agent, your boy Brian Tyson Bagent now has matched the win total as a starting quarterback of Justin Fields this season, it's time to move on. You know, Ryan Poles, the GM, did not select Justin Fields. So he gets a chance here if they get the number one pick through Carolina or themselves to take his quarterback. Whether Luke Getsy is still there as a head coach or not, it doesn't matter. I'm taking Caleb Williams, the quarterback out of Southern Cal. Has had a couple rough games. The Notre Dame game, probably the worst game of his college career. We know what Caleb Williams is. I think we know what he can do. The NFL throws he can make, the athleticism, the off-platform throws, can hit any area of the field. It has the arm strength, has the leadership qualities. And quite frankly, I don't think there's anything that he can't do. So Lincoln Riley quarterbacks have done well in the NFL. Caleb Williams goes to Chicago and they trade Justin Fields.
Allow me to play devil's advocate here because I throwed this graphic up in my prospect review article this week because I just found it interesting. And I don't have the data on every quarterback prospect that's come out in recent years to know how their splits were in this category as well. But prior to the Utah game, in which they lost this past week, Caleb Williams in 23 starts against non-top 25 teams, completing 70% of his passes for 317 yards a game, 78 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. In 5 starts against a top 25 opponent, Caleb Williams is only completing 51% of his passes with 172 yards per game, 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Is that something to worry about?
I don't think it necessarily is because that, ranges the length of time. And we've seen, bare bones USC in some of these games, right? I mean, the bowl game last season, the offensive line is really bad. The defense has continued to be really bad. Like, I don't think it's all on him. I'd be interested to see some of the other top, the Trevor Lawrence and the Andrew Lucks. I think it's to be interesting to, figure some of that out to see what is that drop off. I think most quarterbacks would have some type of drop off, maybe not quite that massive. Right. So I think it's a little concern, but not enough to not take him at number one.
Yeah, I mean, I would think some of the quarterbacks drafted recently, like a Tua Tagovailoa, for instance, or Bryce Young, those drop-offs, all they played was top 25 teams for the most part, right? Joe Burrow, his senior year as well, I would imagine. But I would be curious to see the data, and I'm sure somebody out there's got this somewhere. Travis May, if you're listening, you're our numbers guy. Go get that stuff, and let us know how it is. But Caleb Williams is the pick here and I think if the Chicago Bears have the number one pick, that is going to be what's going to happen because obviously something is going to rise, especially if they're also picking at 3. So that brings me to the Arizona Cardinals at pick 2. And I am I really don't know how to go here because I think Kyler Murray, they're going to keep him, right? I mean, he's probably going to play this week based off the practice report, right? He was a full go in practice, which I would tend to think he's probably going to start this week or at latest next week. And he's under contract for a lot of money for a lot more years. So yeah, I think if Caleb Williams is not on the table here, I don't think Drake May is going to be the pick at 2 for the Cardinals. So I start looking at upgrading wide receiver maybe with Marvin Harrison Jr. Do you address the offensive line here? You did it with Paris Johnson last year. Do you come back and pair Paris Johnson, replace DJ Humphries on the left side with Fashanu. I think you could make that argument, but for my personal, I think they go with Marvin Harrison Jr., the wide receiver from Ohio State, are both of our number one wide receiver prospects, and I think both of our number 2 overall prospects in this class.
He is. I think it's a good pick. Arizona needs that stud receiver. If you're going to stick with Kyler Murray, get him the best wide receiver prospect, in my opinion, that we've had in a while. It's just super rare to have a wide receiver go number 2 overall.
Has it happened since Calvin Johnson?
It has not since Calvin Johnson, and even before that, I think it's there's I can't remember the time before that it was I guess Charles Rogers maybe. Yeah, he was number 2.
Yeah,
which didn't work out too well. But I wonder, because wide receiver in this class is very deep. We talked about it last week. Will a team pull the trigger at number 2 on Marvin Harrison? I almost tend to think maybe we have him kind of too high. I don't think I'm going to move him. I think he's going to be a great NFL player, but I don't have to make the pick at number 2. But it makes perfect sense for Arizona when you just drafted who's going to be your franchise left tackle next year in Paris Johnson. I don't see why you take another offensive tackle at 2.
That's kind of where I was at here. Would make sense here at 3, though. Maybe if you're the Chicago Bears coming back up at 3, and you drafted your quarterback now, Caleb Williams, at 1. So Shane, you're back on the clock here with the Bears and their own pick at pick 3. We could go a number of ways here, right? Would Marvin Harrison be on the board if say the Cardinals did pass and Marvin Harrison was on the board? Is that that's an option for the Bears, right? But he's not on the board anymore. So where are you leaning here? Pick 3, Chicago Bears.
I think it's tricky. I think Harrison would be in the conversation. I do think people tend to overestimate the Bears picking a receiver. You have DJ Moore, who's very, very good. I think they'll take a receiver, maybe 2 in this draft, fairly highly. I don't think you need to take Marvin Harrison. Offensive tackle makes a lot of sense. I think the left tackle position for Chicago is not great. The one thing that holds me back from saying slam dunk, like this is what they'll do, is I think Ryan Poles is really happy that he took Braxton Jones in the 5th round and thinks he's a franchise left tackle. That's makes him look like a really good GM, right? Like he likes him a lot, and he just took Darnell Wright to man the right side. So I think there's a chance that they would pass on offensive tackle and take maybe a pass rusher, take Jerzon Newton from Illinois, or take Jared Verse or Laitu Latu, the Florida State, UCLA, respectively. I'm not quite there yet. I don't feel good enough about any of those 3 prospects to say they're number 3 overall picks. And then we're taking a left tackle. Before last week, I would have said, okay, it's all Fashanu, right? Last week, Fashanu, and you'll get into this a little bit later, played a lot worse against Ohio State than Joe Alt from Notre Dame did. A lot worse in that second half. I'm still going to take Olu Fashanu, the left tackle from Penn State, here at 3 for the Bears, but I don't feel great about it. But I do think he's probably the best fit and has the longest consistency despite that game against Ohio State.
That's fair. I don't think he played as bad against Ohio State last week as you did per se, but he did have a couple of, at least 2, I know for sure, bad reps against JT Tuimoloau. I'm going to get that. I'm going to have to learn this at some point. But I still have Fashanu as the top offensive tackle in this class, and I believe number 3 overall on my board. So I like the pick of Fashanu here. I not saying that Braxton Jones maybe he can move inside. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
The Bears defense is bad, so a pass rusher could have helped there as well. I could see that. All right, so that brings me now up to the pick 4 and the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton's first year, probably not going how Sean Payton thought his first year was going to go. In the Rocky Mountains there, Russell Wilson has played better, at least, right? Not completely looking, he's Waffle House cooking now and not, cooking outside of over a open trash can. I would have considered Fashanu here and to replace Garrett Bowles, and I could argue Joe Alt as well, but I think their defense needs a ton of help. I'm going to draft a pass rusher I think is rising and has risen to now the number one edge spot on my board, and that's UCLA's Laiatu Latu. Nobody has won better rushing the passer this year than Latu has anybody else in the country. He's just dominating every single game for what has been a very good defense for UCLA.
I think it's fair. I mean, the Broncos defense needs more help than we expected them to need. The only issue I have with Latu is just, he's a fifth year guy. He's an older guy. He's had injuries, but he has played the best of any edge rusher this year. So sometimes those older players, we saw with Jermaine Johnson, a while back,
they get pushed down a little bit. Get pushed down as we get closer. Yeah. But as we are still a good 6 months out,
Hey, fair.
So let's move on now. Pick 5. Did we think the New York Giants would be at pick 5 before the season started?
No, those, starting to pick up a little bit of steam, I guess, of a 14-7 win against the Commanders counts. This is the easiest pick for me of outside of number 1. I'm taking Drake May, the quarterback from North Carolina here. I mean, Daniel Jones was pretty bad in the first couple games. I know they signed him to a contract, but it's not, this like actual long-term contract. So I think they can get out of it. Maybe he has to stick around for a year and kind of, learn that. But after 2024, they have an out of that contract. There you go. That's it. Daniel Jones can start the year. Drake May can learn for a little bit. I think Drake May struggled against Virginia a bit in that game. They lost. He's not this, I don't think he is on Caleb Williams level, but he's definitely better than the rest of the quarterbacks in this class and has a ton of upside that demands a top 5 pick.
So that brings me to another team that probably didn't think they'd be picking this high right now. It's the New England Patriots, and a team that maybe they would have considered Drake May if he was on the board.
Ran the card up there
pick 6, but Drake May is gone. I'm replacing Trent Brown here. Brown's been around the block. He's been in the league a good amount of time since.
He's been in the league a long time.
I'm trying to see when he was originally 15. No, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Anyway, he's old. So I'm going to replace Trent Brown here with Notre Dame offensive tackle Joe Alt, because I don't necessarily like the wide receiver value that I could have got here. So, and I don't necessarily think that they are going to actively be in the pass rusher market as they have spent some draft capital on that in recent years. So Joe Alt is who I settle on here at pick 6. Any other place we could have gone there?
No, I mean, that's definitely where I would have gone. Yeah. I mean, Trent Brown is 30 years old, but he's had a lot of injuries. He's not definitely playing.
He's an old 30.
Right. So no, I think it's a great pick, and Joe Alt just feels like a Patriot, doesn't he? Like it feels feels perfect.
As much as anybody else does. All right. So 2 of our contributors at Draft Countdown, Miranda Wilhelm and Pigskin Paul, both crying right now as the Green Bay Packers are in the dumps, right? We're sitting here at pick 7, the Green Bay on the clock. This will be the highest they picked in quite a while, right? So that doesn't feel great for Green Bay to be picking here at 7. We can't get a quarterback here either, right? Jordan Love ain't it. I think we're seeing that week-to-week basis. So I am anxious to see where you end up taking Green Bay here with their top pick.
It's tough. I don't think it's a great spot for them because I think offensive tackle is probably their biggest need. And they love an athletic offensive tackle. So, I considered kind of the next couple on my board. I mean, Kingsley Suamataia, I love out of BYU. It's too high for him. Marius Mims from Georgia, J.C. Latham from Alabama, I think are considerations for the Packers here. I just don't feel confident any of them are top 10 picks yet. I think one of them will be, at least one will be. I just don't know who it is yet. So I'm not quite there. Receiver, like you said, doesn't feel great past this. So I'm going to kind of go with the best player available. We know Jair Alexander's still great. Rasul Douglas is not it at the opposite cornerback. He'll only have 1 year left on his contract. They really don't have much else in the cupboard at corner. So I'm going to take Kool-Aid McKinstry, the corner out of Alabama, here at 7 for the Packers. Like, I don't love it because the offense needs the help, but it feels like a Packers move to just not take that.
You're probably right. I mean, they've added some good passers, Rashawn Gary, right, and the likes the last couple of years. So I can see why you pass on that aspect of it. And the values just doesn't add up there with wide receiver or offensive tackle here at pick 7. So I'm with you. I think, Kool-Aid is the guy to go there, and somebody I definitely would have considered on the next spot, which is pick 8 here in the Los Angeles Chargers. I think they would have considered Kool-Aid McKinstry there. And I don't have I released my new top 150. The only other corner I have is Cooper DeJean at 20 overall. So the value 20th overall player, pick 8, doesn't add up. So I am left spinning my wheels here, and I don't know if this is the wise way to go, because you just drafted another weapon for Herbert in last year's first round. But that's where I'm going to go here, because like I said, I bet just add talent, right? Just add talent around Justin Herbert, and I think they draft Georgia tight end Brock Bowers at pick 8.
I mean, Quentin Johnston has not exactly had a stellar rookie year either.
I'm not quitting him yet, though.
I know, but Mike Williams went down. I'm like, oh, here we go. Here comes Quentin Johnston.
One target.
Yeah, still can't get it. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same thing where we're kind of hitting a point, and this is what happens in October, where
right.
I don't think there's any top 10 picks left in this draft. Like Brock Bowers, I love Brock Bowers. Now with the tightrope surgery, I don't think it affects the draft stock much. He's not a top 10 pick. Like, he's not a big tight end that's, super athletic. Like, I don't think he'll be a top 10 pick. But yeah, he's up there on my board because I think he's that talented, and it's kind of where you're at to make that move.
Well, let me ask you this though. So let's talk about Brock Bowers. You know what? We'll save that for the tight end segment.
Yeah,
think about it. That's fair. All right, so let's move on. Shane, your last pick here in the top 10 is pick 9, and the Tennessee Titans. They're going to end up picking higher than 9.
We were talking on the W Marketplace podcast how the Steelers will beat the Jaguars this week, then lose to the Titans on Thursday Night Football next week. So just get ready for that.
Is Will Levis going to be the starting quarterback next Thursday? Because he is starting this Sunday.
Yeah, look, they said they might go with a 2-quarterback system this week, so we'll see.
Really?
Maybe get Malik Willis and Will Levis.
Or are we trying? We're going to do this in the NFL. We're going to Steve Spurrier quarterbacks out on. Okay.
Hey, Kansas State, it's working for. So Tennessee.
Atlanta's going to romp in this game at this point.
if they do that, I don't know how true it is, but
I mean, they may do that anyway. So where are we going here with the Titans?
Like, I'm trying to stall a little bit because I don't love the value here in terms of matching Tennessee's needs. Because I think their front 7 on the defensive side is pretty good. But that's really where the value is here. Offensive tackle, still need a right tackle. Don't really have one. They could use a receiver. I don't think there's anyone here I feel confident taking. So I think I'm going to go pass rusher here. Like, Harold Landry is very good. Arden Keys played decently on the other side, but I think having a little more pass rush can never be a bad thing and help this defense out. I always feel like I never know who to take for Tennessee, but I'm going to take Jared Verse, the edge rusher out of Florida State. It was pretty close between him and Dallas Turner. I think Turner will be a little more athletic. I think teams will like Verse's toughness a little bit more. I think he's going to fit, what the Tennessee Titans do and what Mike Vrabel wants that defense to be a little bit more.
That's fair. I like the pick.
It's a tough. Tennessee's always tough for me to mock, and this is a tough spot for their needs. So I hope they pick higher, so I can just take a right tackle for them or whatever.
Yeah, it'd be a lot easier if they were further up the board to match the pick number and the value. All right, so let's wrap up this top 10. A team I'm not necessarily sure is going to end up in the top 10. I think they're going to play their way into that 14 to 15 range because I feel like they're too good to pick in the top 10, but not good enough to make the playoffs. I think they're in playoff purgatory perennially at this point now by Mickey's constant can kicking down the road that he does each and every year with the salary cap. This is where they are. But if they are indeed picking the top 10, I immediately jumped out. I was like, they're going to draft an offensive lineman, right? Because they're going to give up on Penning already, as they seemingly have. He's like third on the depth chart right now at left tackle. They're starting James Hurst.
Wild.
And I completely whiffed on Trevor Penning unless he figures it out. I thought he would be a dominant tackle in the NFL, but goes to show you. I'm going to go to the defensive side of the ball here, and I'm going to give them an edge guy, but I'm going to bypass a couple of guys I have rated higher to go with a guy I think fits their defensive scheme more. And I think if you're looking to replace Cameron Jordan, you need to get somebody of similar size and, ability. So I'm going to say at the 10th pick, the Saints take Ohio State edge rusher JT Tuimoloau at the 10th pick.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that would be interesting. I think this week he kind of turned it on against Penn State in a big game. I think that could help his draft stock. He's very hot and cold. So I could see it. I could see it happening. And I definitely like the fit with the Saints because similar thing. He feels kind of like a Saints defender.
Yeah. I mean, he has that. I mean, they have a type. Right on that side with Tano Passanio, they've signed as a free agent, and some other guys they brought in. He's definitely. I mean, they've just extended Curtis Granderson on the other side. So, and they drafted who did they draft this past year? Foskey from Notre Dame.
Yeah,
you drafted Brzee in the first round for the inside. I think that a guy like Tuimoloau would fit great there in New Orleans. So that's going to wrap up our top 10 mock draft. I'll briefly recap it here. First pick, Chicago Bears by way of Carolina. Caleb Williams, quarterback Southern Cal. Number 2, Arizona takes Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver, Ohio State. 3, Chicago takes Olu Fashanu, offensive tackle, Penn State. 4, Denver takes Laiatu Latu, edge rusher, UCLA. 5, the New York Giants take Drake May, quarterback, North Carolina. 6, New England takes Joe Alt, offensive tackle, Notre Dame. 7, Green Bay takes Kool-Aid McKinstry, cornerback, Alabama. 8, Chargers take Brock Bowers, tight end, Georgia. 9, Tennessee takes Jared Verse, edge rusher, Florida State. And 10, New Orleans takes Ohio State edge rusher JT Tuimoloau.